On Saturday, June 27th, Congressman Chris Smith held a town meeting at the East Brunswick Public Library. The public engaged in a lively 2-hour question and answer period with the Congressman. Here are some excerpts from the town meeting.
At this time, I'd like to introduce the Congressman from the 4th Congressional District, Christopher H. Smith.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for coming out to this town meeting. One of the things that I stressed when I was running for office last year, as well as when I ran in the 1978 campaign, was that too often when somebody is elected to federal office, they go down to Washington and it's the last you ever see of them. And it was my contention and my belief that you have to stay in touch with those that you represent. The very term Congressman, my real term is Representative Chris Smith. And what I'm trying to do through these town meetings and through my weekly visits back to the district is to stay in touch with you and to ask you your opinions. We have a survey right now out in the mail that should be at your home in about 3 weeks, asking your views on various questions. And I'll be doing this every year, so as long as I'm in office. But getting back and staying in constant contact with you and accountable to you. You know, there's times you may like what I'm doing, there's times you may not like what I'm doing, but above all, you'll know what I'm doing, and you'll have input. You know, I do listen, and I think that's very key to this job. As you may know, I'm on 2 very good committees in the Congress. I'm on the Veterans Affairs Committee, which has jurisdiction over the 30+ million beneficiaries of veterans' benefits and the hospitals and the outpatient clinics and all the apparatus that has been devised over the years for the veteran. I'm very much a part of that with my committee, and I'm also on the Small Business Committee. And as you may know, 100 million people in this country are employed or are employers of a small business. So it's a very vital committee, and we're doing quite a lot to try to revitalize this sector of the economy that has been, to date, very largely forgotten. And you know, it's always big business that gets heard, but not small business. And I'm very happy to be on that committee, and I've been working hard with legislation to try to aid and assist our small businessmen and women. I'm also on the Republican Policy Committee, which is a group that meets every week and sometimes twice or 3 times weekly when we have key votes. And we argue, there's 28 members, as to what the position of the 190 Republicans should be on various pieces of legislation. Sometimes I'm part of the majority, sometimes part of the minority, but it is a very good forum because it gives me a finger in devising our overall policy as a party. And I was one of 3 of 52 new Republicans that were elected to that position, and I was very happy that my colleagues gave me that trust and that added responsibility. I've introduced and co-sponsored approximately 50 pieces of legislation right now, and I have more that I'm working on. Many of them deal with small business, many of them deal with Veterans Affairs, and others deal with some of the other key concerns that I know you're concerned about, and I'm also concerned about too. We've had a few key budget votes so far. A couple months back, we voted on the Reagan budget in what was called a target, a non-binding target, and now yesterday we stayed to about 8 o'clock at night down in Washington working on what's known as the reconciliation process and on a reconciliation budget, which now sets an overall target of spending of some $695 billion for fiscal '82. There are many line categories in there that I disagreed and agreed with. And during the course of the last several months, I have worked both within the Republican Policy Committee, my own committees, as well as just as a member on the floor speaking up on issues that are important to me, as well as meeting with 3 times with David Stockman, our Office of Management and Budget Director, to try to get some things changed and added back and try to shift what I thought was too much of an emphasis on defense spending and try to get some of that money back into the social spending area. This budget, 1982, was revised many times, and those of us in the Northeast, and I'm part of a Northeastern coalition of congressmen, liberals, moderates, and conservatives, who feel that we've got to get more of our fair share here in the Northeast. And again, we're also very much united in our efforts to try to have some of those social programs helped. There were parts, like I said, in the budget that we voted on yesterday that I didn't like and parts that I liked. The budget, I'm thankful to say, had more money in it for the aid to the handicapped than the budget that was proposed by the Democrats. And one of the key areas, in my view, that I've been fighting for has been handicapped education and legislation that will aid the handicapped. Matter of fact, the first legislation that I've gotten passed by the Congress, and it was part of the bill yesterday, the big mammoth reconciliation bill, was in my Small Business Committee. I was able to push an amendment that lowers the interest rates for small businessmen and women who are handicapped. and it lowers it to a point so that many of the goodwill industries and many of the handicapped entrepreneurs will be able to continue in business, and it was projected that many would have gone out if we had raised the interest rate. So that was my first legislative achievement, and I was very happy with that, and I think it's setting the kind of tone that I think I want to carry with me as long as I'm in office. Because that, again, there's, a congressman really has to pick out, or a congresswoman, 5 to 10 to 15 areas of vital interest that he or she promotes and pursues. Very often it coincides with your committee assignments, because there you have the best possibility and the best probability of truly shaping legislation. The committee work, as you know, when a bill is introduced, it's immediately assigned to a committee which has jurisdiction over that legislation. They begin markup on that legislation, as it's known, amending, deleting, or throwing the whole thing out, or coming up with a new package. When you're in committee, if you decide that this is a good piece of legislation, and if you amend it, it goes to the full floor for a vote. And then if you have a closed rule, there can be no amendments to it, or, there's a lot of parliamentary procedures, and I could get into that if you'd like. But the key is the committee process. So I've picked like 5 to 10 areas, handicapped ed being one of them, that I've tried to make my mark on this particular Congress, Small Business and Veterans Affairs being 2 others. And and hopefully by the end of these 2 years, in the next year or so, you'll see the fruit of this work. Already there has been a few accomplishments. Having said that, if you do have some questions, again, this is a time to hear from you, and I have heard a lot of good information. At every town meeting I pick up new ideas, and I'm sure I'll come away with this one with some new ideas.
Give you 2 forms. They have a question that says, does your company have a pension plan? Now that's a tricky question, because there are companies that do have pension plans, and you have to be with the company for about 10 years in order to be on a pension plan. If you're there 9 years and you leave the company, you lost everything. Meantime, if you know you only have 3 or 4 years for retirement on that plan, then you can prepare yourself with IRA accounts. Mm-hmm. I would suggest that that question be changed. Would you be eligible for your company pension plan? Then if you're not eligible, then even if the company has a pension plan, you only have 3 or 4 years to go, then you can prepare your IRA. The way the law states now, I'm under the impression that anybody, say who's 58, 59, or 60, and have to retire at 65, they're out of luck for 10 years. Could you do something about that?
Okay, could we get your name and address? We have your name, but I mean,
yes.
And what I'll do when I get back to Washington.
But of course that affects everybody,
yes,
besides myself.
Okay. I'll check with the Committee on Ways and Means, which has jurisdiction in tax writing.
Yes.
And I'll check with our staff as well as some of our members and find out if there's any move to do this, number one, because if there is, I'll just join in with the move.
You understand the question?
Yes. And the second, I'll find out what can be done in terms of introducing legislation. Very often, if there's something that's wrong in the law, it doesn't have to be changed through legislation. It can be done through a regulation promulgated by, say, the IRS or the HHS, Health and Human Services Administration. If they feel that something can be changed, all they have to do is list the new rule, and it goes through. Because we really usually, when we establish legislation, just establish broad parameters within which each one of the agencies can establish rules that they think will best carry out the mandate and the will of the Congress.
I'm putting the IRA anyway. I'm going to challenge them if they want to, because it's logical that I did it. Now, how do you want my name? I'll just give it to
Deirdre,
her
sure.
when I leave here.
And within a week, I'll have an answer to you
Okay.
written
All right,
form.
thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sir.
Just in reference to the man's question, isn't there something now in the Reagan plans about where you'd be able to have a pension plan plus?
Yes.
Either a key
Part of the
component
tax
or-
package would include that. Yeah.
So I think that's a very important thing. I think it's terrific.
Reagan, I think, has come up with an excellent tax package that is doing a lot of things that the Ways and Means Committee in both the Senate and the House have just for so long either dragged their feet or refused to do, like equalizing the marriage penalty, which, I think so many of us are concerned with. And Millicent Fenwick, to her credit, had a bill in for the last several years with over 250 co-sponsors, more than is needed to pass, and it never got a hearing. And now part of his tax package will include that equalization, or at least it's not a complete equalization, but at least it's a reduction of that penalty. Yes, sir.
Congressman, I have a great concern for the future of the country in terms of our youth. One program that I think is in a very questionable state at the present time is the guaranteed student loan program. From what I'm reading, I'm very much distressed, and particularly, again, many of us that are classified perhaps as middle class, we're getting it from both ends. And I find it extremely distressing, not only in my own family, but in terms of most of my friends. The future of America depends on our young people. I understand, and I think most of us understand, some of the travesty that's taken place in the past. I think our honest concern is our young people, and I'm not speaking just for my own family, but I think the kids I know from our township and so forth, are good, honest, decent citizens and future contributors to our society in the future. They deserve the break of the guaranteed loan, which is simply saying they're going to pay that money back. The fact that so many in the past have gotten away with not paying back, I don't think should be a consequence of the young people of today. And I don't know where it's heading, but from what I'm reading, it looks very, very frightening. Young people are going to be denied the opportunity to finance their education at the present time and, in fact, pay it back at a future date. And I hope that you would take a serious concern for that. Many of your constituents and supporters are in that category.
Okay. On the guaranteed student loan, that was one of the key items that the Northeastern Coalition brought to our leadership, Bob Michael, Trent Lott, and David Stockman, as well as to the President, that we thought that we were undercutting something that was working relatively well. The payback, there has been, I think it's up to 12% of those who defaulted, but still, there was a great number of students who wouldn't have been able, middle-class students particularly, who wouldn't have been able to go to college without it. And we were able to win some concessions on that. And matter of fact, we were able to put back several hundred millions of dollars to the GSL program, so much so that yesterday's vote, the Democrat package called for $2.7 billion for the GSL. The Republican package called for $2.6 billion. So there was a $100 million difference. And my feeling is this: since there was no opportunity for those of us who wanted an equalization there, I thought I would have rather gone with 2.7. There was no rule that allowed us to amend any of the portions of the large bill. It was a 600-page bill, and I was in favor of an open rule so we can go line by line and find out areas that we liked and disliked and vote up or down and live or die on the record when we get back home and say, look, I was for the GSL, I was against it. I was for this funding, I was against it. But instead, we had to take the package in mass. But I do think there will be an opportunity down the road when what they call the supplemental process begins, when it's found that perhaps we're short money for the GSL program, to put in legislation. We'd have to work with Reagan with this and, the leadership on both sides of the aisle to try to increase the money. What we're trying to do now, I think, is establish caps and, again, a ceiling, but that ceiling is never in concrete. Time and time again, the Congress says, okay, we didn't live within that means, therefore we've got to increase it in this area, that area. So again, working with these other congressmen, we were able to put money back into it. Didn't go as far as we would like, but I think we'll have an opportunity later on. They're also leaving up to the Secretary of Education the responsibility of establishing a needs test for student loans, and this we're pushing to be as flexible as possible, not just a cap like anybody over 35,000, but to really bring in a lot of other competing criteria, place in the country that you live in. It's cheaper to live in the South as it is in the Northeast because of our use of coal, or because of the cold in the winter, and there's a lot of other reasons.
A lunchtime concert was presented on the steps of the Municipal building on Wednesday by the First Baptist Youth Mission Group.
It's not the harmony and it's not the measure key. If you think it's one of these, you are wrong. This is a tune that catches in your ear. When we sing this song, this is the tune you hear. And any voice can sing it, hers or his. What this is the tune.
What do you think this is? She comes to a melody, sounds like a tune. The tune, the tune, the tune. She comes to a melody.
baseline with you, to move that baseline with you, to prove that baseline is the most important part of all bass. It's the thing that makes it swing, it's the thing that makes it ring, it's the thing that takes it home. There's no mistaking with here, to charge that baseline down here, to charge that baseline just in case you ask it this. Baseline has no basket. If you wonder why we like the way to groove, it's the baseline. We're here to move, to move, to move, to move, to move, to move. This is the harmony.
Cameras and editing by Arthur Guitars and Peter Catamessa. This tape was produced at the East Brunswick Public Library, 1981.
Here comes more harmony, vividly colorful harmony. Someone please set me free from three-part harmony. Here, the moving baseline, we're here to move that baseline down. Here, the moving baseline, we're here to move that baseline.